I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show, we have back with us Mati Greenspan, crypto entrepreneur and CEO of Quantum Economics. Mati, welcome back to the show. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. Good to see you again.
Likewise. I know there's a lot of stuff to catch up on, and you're working on a lot of new initiatives as well. Let's just catch the viewers up for those who didn't see our first interview, and obviously there's been a lot going on since then. So maybe you could just start us with a little bit of your history and what you're focused on in the industry and some of your more recent works.
For sure. So hi, my name is Mati Greenspan. I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Economics. I was a senior executive at eToro for about 7.5 years. I started Quantum Economics in November 2019. I went to work from home just before COVID struck, so I was an early adopter there. Basically, Quantum Economics is a firm for research, advisory, and money management within the blockchain space. We've got about 30 movers and shakers on our team, people who are, VCs or CEOs and founders, board members, or even writers and analysts, people who see things in a unique way from the blockchain perspective. We publish a lot of our research on Medium, of course, and we have a newsletter that goes out to all our readers, which is available on quantumeconomics.io. More recently, we started a Bitcoin mining company in Texas called Quantum Expeditions, which is going pretty well. We managed to overraise even during the bear market while everything was falling. I didn't think it was possible, but it was mainly from readers of the newsletter and people who follow on Twitter. So I'm very grateful for their support. And of course, very grateful for our team who does wonderful things every day. So that's I guess a good place to start.
Congratulations on that. And yeah, Bitcoin mining is a whole nother world for people that are focused on trading, just accumulating Bitcoin. I've spoken to people that are getting their first Bitcoins, and they sort of look at the buy versus build, I guess you could call it, and they're like, should I start mining? And they don't even own any Bitcoin yet. And I'm like, that is a whole nother story to start a Bitcoin mining operation. And besides just buying your first Bitcoin. So I can imagine.
It used to be the opposite, actually. It used to be like people would start by mining Bitcoin with their laptop, and then they're like, well, what do I do with these things?
Definitely. And, speaking of Bitcoin, a lot's happened since the beginning of this year in 2022. Just a lot of, Bitcoin's been in the boxing ring, just taking beatings, and the crypto market as well. And it just doesn't seem to end. This week there was another DeFi hack, and last night Solana had an exploit, and we saw Tesla was dumping their Bitcoin, and never mind all the other Luna and whatever else happened.
Yeah.
What's your take on the resilience of this market? I feel like we're hearing all of these negative things happening, but it seems like if all of this bad stuff has happened, then the market should be lower than it is right now. What do you think about what's going on?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of FUD at the moment, right? And I don't want to speculate and say that it's kind of one way or the other as far as overwhelming news. I think that this is a bear market, and good things happen and bad things happen within a bear market. So it's not one way or the other. I think that. June was a real ball buster, honestly. We saw companies firing employees left, right, and center. We saw, companies just freezing withdrawals, which that should never, ever happen, literally. I think July was a lot more lighthearted, and you see people out there looking to get a good deal or strike a deal, right? And I think that it did seem to me that we may have, especially with the price action in the last few days, we may have inflicted a floor there. But obviously past performance is not an indication of future results, so we don't really ever know the future. So it's just where things are headed from here. I'm optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, when we've been in it for this long, and we know when you zoom out, when in doubt, zoom out is what they like to say, and to look at the cycles. And Bitcoin has never been proven wrong that each cycle it tends to go higher eventually. And usually when there's a bear market, people are crying. That's usually close to the bottom, if not the bottom. And the same sort of goes for when Bitcoin was at 69,000 and everyone's screaming from the rooftops and getting their friends in. Usually that's around the top of the current cycle. Doesn't mean it's the top of ever.
Right.
Looking, I know you look into sort of the metrics and the economics behind. There's a lot of information on the Bitcoin blockchain and the Ethereum blockchain, and the foundations of the wallets and the amount transactions. It seems that those amounts, and when you look at the price and you sort of look at the activity on the blockchains, it doesn't always compute the same story. And it looks like the foundations continue to get stronger and more people start getting involved. Do you have any insights onto those set of numbers that are backing the blockchain?
Yeah, no, I put out a tweet the other day. It was like, people often conflate price with value, and they're totally different things. And market cycles are not new. I mean, as you mentioned, it's a very old saying. When the cab driver starts giving you stock picks, it's time to get out. But as far as blockchain data, what we can see, and the one metric that I keep referring people to, is the transactional volume on the blockchain. Average amount of money sent through Bitcoin every day continues to go higher and higher. If we look at the 90-day average of the amount of Bitcoin sent in US dollar terms, is somewhere around $65 billion before. It's $65 billion right now, where it's never been that high before. Not even close to there. When Bitcoin stabilized just before COVID at around 10K, and we're about 13 times higher than that right now.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a really good sign. And do you see that as like a slowly upward trending, month over month? Do you think that will continue to grow?
Well, what it tells me is that even though people are freaking out about the price, the network continues to grow, and Bitcoin really derives its value from the network. So it's basically, what it means to me is that people are just confusing price with value, and they're two completely separate things, right? I think Warren Buffett, even though am I still allowed to quote him?
If you must.
Yes, I believe he said that price is what you pay for something and value is what you get.
Very, very nice. And yeah, sometimes he's right, although maybe not about his takes on Bitcoin.
He's never been very good with technology.
Yeah. And now I'm curious, because you mentioned at the beginning, you're getting into mining, and often miners are also looking at different statistics with the hash power and whether the miners are in profit, and maybe that can determine if the Bitcoin is going up or not, because they also have to sell off Bitcoin, a lot of Bitcoin, to sort of maintain their mining operations as well. And then there's the hash rate, which seems to be like a signal of the strength of the Bitcoin network, continues to grow as well. Are you following into the mining metrics?
Yeah, well, mining is for building our company, Quantum Expeditions. We had to do a fair bit of forecasting as far as what we thought, the hash rate might be, the price of Bitcoin might be, and what the difficulty to mine it. And that's always like kind of throwing a dart in a foggy place, because you can't really see the target, and things are always moving. But what we didn't count on, which was really some wind in our sails, was that when the price started going down, I thought the hash rate might go down. It didn't really, but what did go down was the price of the mining equipment. So for us, that was a really awesome thing to see, like, all the calculations that we'd done and going, just to set up costs, and all of a sudden it's like 40% of what it was before, because the mining equipment is the most expensive part of all of this. So for us, that was like a really awesome point of inflection.
That's great to hear. And let's stay on Bitcoin for a minute. I'm curious on your take on finding other ways that the market is sort of looking to increase the utility of Bitcoin as DeFi had continued to grow on Ethereum and these other smart contract chains. There's some chains like DeFi chain and wrapping Bitcoin into DeFi. Do you see that as a major or minor value add into Bitcoin, and any of the reason attributed to people wanting to use it? Or is it strictly just, as the Bitcoin maximalists say, like Bitcoin is a store of value, and regardless of all these other functionalities and narratives you try to put on top of it, is the reason why everyone's going back to Bitcoin, as the Swan Bitcoins keep saying now, as these centralized yield generation platforms are going under, just hold your own Bitcoin, and that's the end of story.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's kind of packed with a few different angles that we could go in. No, honestly, I mean, Bitcoin is decentralized finance. It is the beginning of decentralized finance. But that's not to say that there can't be more than that. I've been in plenty of fights with the Bitcoin maximalists. I've even received death threats from them, simply for calling Bitcoin a cryptocurrency, which I still believe it is, despite the threats. And I am a hardcore Bitcoiner, even though I am currently actively building DeFi solutions on other chains, so to speak, or quite literally. So just to say, okay, well, Bitcoin is the end all be all of this invention, it would be kind of silly, because what we have is a protocol for transferring value over the internet. And to say that that should be limited to money is just kind of saying, well, money is the only financial asset. It's not. There's plenty of different types of financial assets. The ones who are building out that infrastructure on top of Bitcoin, I commend them. However, Satoshi himself was very careful not to be inclusive about those type of things, about building things on top of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is about the transfer and ownership of money, and not about building on top of it interesting, neat, and other products. I'm quite certain that if he was here, he would say, guys, we're not changing the chain. If you figure out how to build something on top of the current level, on the current Bitcoin protocol, great, wonderful, that's awesome. But please don't try and implement protocol changes to make things more user-friendly for programmers to experiment. That's not what Bitcoin is about.
I like that. And yeah, don't touch something that's not broken.
Bitcoin is the safest computer network on the planet, and we don't ever want to. Ethereum is moving over to proof of stake, which in my mind it's insane. Like, because there's so many things that could just go wrong on and I don't even, obviously I'm not a programmer, but it just, to me, these type of things, they have gone wrong in the past, and we've seen examples of stuff that should have gone smoothly, and then all of a sudden you're changing everything.
Yeah, no, that is a huge feat for Ethereum, and I've heard many analogies, but it's like trying to change an airplane engine while the airplane's flying and not crash, or try to change your operating system from Windows to Mac without the applications shutting down. It's a big feat.
Yes, exactly. And I hope it goes well. I really hope it does, and I believe that it will. But there is that 1 in 100 chance that it won't, right? And that 1 in 100 chance, for Ethereum people, I think it's worth the risk. For Bitcoin, should never take a risk like that.
Yeah. And speaking of building things on top of Bitcoin and not into the core protocol, we're seeing currently the adoption of countries that actually need to use Bitcoin as money because of hyperinflation, and we're seeing Bitcoin Beach pop up, Bitcoin Lake, Bitcoin Jungle, all of these cities that are starting to use Bitcoin as their main currency. And only one of them has really made it official in El Salvador, but that trend seems to be continuing.
And the Central African Republic too. Don't forget that.
True. I haven't heard any updates on how that's going, but I'm hopefully it follows suit with El Salvador. And we saw over double-digit GDP growth in El Salvador with the increase of Bitcoin. It looks like they're doing well. So hopefully other countries can follow suit and follow it with those benefits as well.
It's still early days, Ashton. I think that it might take us a while to realize some of the benefits, but the initial boon for El Salvador, I think, was more about people coming in, idealists moving to El Salvador and bringing lots of money with them. That type of thing can raise the GDP of a small country by many multiples. Definitely,
yeah, and that's a great point that I think people don't think about, because it's definitely both. We've seen Max Kaiser and the Bitcoin maxis that are actually moving to El Salvador, and then there's the thought that El Salvadorians that didn't have a bank account, 70% of them didn't have a bank account. Now they're using Bitcoin, and we're told that they prefer to stay in Bitcoin and hold on to it and transact with it. And I did go to Bitcoin Beach, and I did buy some things in Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, experienced it firsthand, and I thought it was pretty cool. Just at a picnic table on just some little ladies selling their food, and it's like, okay, you're paying in Bitcoin for everything there, and that's their preference. So is it that's actually helping the GDP, or is it the rich people coming in?
Well, I mean, the effect on the GDP, I think, regarding people coming in, I think is going to be a lot greater than that, especially in the short term of switching the money, and especially since the market is very volatile, right? You can say over time through the cycles, and you look at the GDP over that time frame, then you could probably make a connection. But in the meantime, I would think that there have been people in El Salvador that were buying up at 60K, and now to have their wealth drastically reduced like that, I don't think that's having a positive impact on the GDP whatsoever. But in fact, the opposite. But again, I mean, this is the only thing that we have so far is short-term data, and it's very. I would caution against making any long-term inferences from short-term data.
Good point, Mati. And I've heard stories about some of these other countries, in Argentina and Venezuela, that have had hyperinflation, and they say the citizens that bought Bitcoin, even at the all-time high, still haven't lost as much as they would have if they would have held onto their currency that have
particularly Venezuela. I remember doing the math. If they'd have bought Bitcoin in 2017 at $20,000 and sold it at 2018 at $3,500, they were money ahead.
Wow, crazy. So I haven't heard any news on any new countries with bills making progress yet, but I think there's a few in the short list that I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. And it's definitely a long game, especially when there's governments involved.
It'll happen when it happens, Ashton. I'm in no rush. In the meantime, we get to accumulate while Bitcoin proliferates.
Definitely, yeah. No, it's a blessing to not, the more time that people can learn about this technology and get involved. And you're still early, and so now
we've been early all this time, and we may still be early for the next 50 or even 100 years. We don't know.
Good point. Now I want to switch over to, we talked about Bitcoin, we talked about DeFi a little bit. I want to talk about NFTs. I know that you're working with some companies that are looking at a special kind of NFTs. And I would love to start with, sort of your take on the NFT market. The craze was pretty crazy throughout the end of 2021, and a lot of new entrants moving into cryptocurrency that weren't really interested in finance. They're either collectors or artists, which I think is a good thing. to bring in sort of new kind of people into the market. Although a lot of them probably learned the hard way, getting sort of buying assets that they thought would just go to the roof, and they didn't really seem to. We know with the market, the NFTs really seem to move with the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and as those prices dropped, so did like the value that people thought they could just flip NFTs quickly, and the floor prices of NFTs really dropped. Although I'm still seeing some of the top NFT profile picture projects like CryptoPunks and Bored Apes still seem to be putting out new initiatives and trying to find other ways to bring value to their holders. It seems like a lot of the other groups are sort of dying off and going dark. What's your take on sort of NFTs 1.0 and the craze that we had and where we're at with that right now?
Right. So I never really did ascribe to the NFTs as a profile picture phenomenon. I suppose that it does have its place. When we think about blockchain, right, and we think about the Web3 in general, what we're talking about is programmable money. And to me, it's always been more exciting to see the NFTs that have some sort of an interesting or unique use case, rather than just being a generative profile picture. I did I did buy a few NFTs out there, and somebody came up to me when the Bored Apes were at like 20,000, like, Mati, you should just go for one, and I'm like, but I like my profile picture. I don't think that I would be represented better by a monkey. And I kicked myself afterward, going, oh my gosh, they're at and then they were at $1 million floor. I was like, oh shoot. But then I said to myself, I wouldn't have sold it at $1 million anyway. So what the heck difference does it make? I would have been out the 20 grand and still, okay, I'd have a cool picture, a cool monkey picture in my profile. But I remember seeing a headline where a virtual boat in a land that doesn't even exist yet was selling for more than an actual yacht in physical reality. And at the time, it was kind of mind-blowing for everybody to see those type of things. But to me, it actually kind of made sense. And even though I know now that it was a bubble, the idea that boat can sail through virtual space, and I could give it to you, you could give it to me, and that anybody in the world can bid on it without any kind of restrictions whatsoever from government entities or financial institutions, that in itself is transformative. And the idea that anybody can look at a piece of art and instantly be able to have a piece of that, or to interact with it in some way, rather than just copy paste it or something like that, or have some level of ownership of that. That is extremely exciting. And when you think about the world, which has 8 billion people in it, right? And you think about there's only one of this NFT, then you start to understand the numbers, right? Somebody out there of the 8 billion people is willing to ascribe this value to this item, right? Even though that in essence turned out to be a very temporary situation, and they're no longer willing to spend that money on that item. Mm-hmm. But to me, again, it really comes back to, what does it do? Why is this something that I couldn't do before? How is this different than Web 2, and how is it shaping the future?
Great point. And I feel like if that digital yacht was actually backed by a real yacht as well, and the digital form was the ability to transfer the ownership of it to anybody, it doesn't matter where it was actually docked, you could transfer it to somebody in a different country, and they would actually own a physical yacht as well. And if they wanted to redeem it, they could. I see a huge ton of potential in that kind of transfer ownership. And I feel like asset-backed NFTs although they're very early compared to profile pictures of monkeys, are where we're heading, where we can tokenize things and be able to transfer ownership and prove ownership digitally, and make it so much easier to trade things.
That's right.
And I know that you're working with some projects that are working on asset-backed NFTs, and there's so many different things you could, anything in the world, you could back it with a real-world asset and sort of make an NFT of it. But because we're early, there's sort of first use cases. Can you talk about what you're working on right now with these first versions of asset-backed NFTs?
Yeah, man. Thank you for asking. So I'm advising a company called INFS, which stands for Independent Non-Fungible Securities, which are basically NFTs that are backed by physical goods, and then obviously have all of the benefits of an NFT and a programmable money. The company is backed by a jeweler who's a local jeweler in Jerusalem. They're quite outstanding in their work. They've been around since 1970, and they're constantly winning awards for for their creativity and style and everything like that. And their CEO Elias, I mean, he's a pretty awesome guy, and he got into cryptocurrencies pretty early on, and he's understanding the transformative potential. And he goes, so what can I do over here? And he came up with this idea that basically blew my mind, where they mint an NFT represented by a physical gold coin, which has rubies and diamonds set on the gold coin, but is actually more than that, is backed by physical jewelry in their vault. So for an investor, obviously, you want to you always think about I always think about my, what can I lose? What can I win? Right. So what's your risk reward ratio over here? So essentially, the reward side, I mean, it's as the platform grows and other things turn into securities and turn into non-fungible securities using the platform, you're gaining a revenue percentage of everything that goes through the platform, everything that is built on top of it. Obviously, the IP involved in making an NFT a security, right? I mean, think about every cryptocurrency out there wants to avoid being a security, even though they probably are. But in this case, they're bona fide securities and playing completely by the rules, and everything is completely kosher. So the obviously the intellectual property there is huge. But on the other side, I mean, what can you lose? Essentially, I mean, if you, for any reason, the project doesn't work out, or you just don't want to be involved in it anymore, you're actually you've bought some jewelry, right? So I mean, and people buy jewelry pretty much every day. In fact, Ashton, I'm going to tell you a secret. The number one performing thing in my portfolio this year, since the start of the year, is a pair of diamond earrings that I bought for my wife.
Wow, that's very cool.
Because everything else has taken a nosedive, and the price of diamonds has gone up. So I wasn't planning on that, and obviously those are non-liquid assets. I can never sell them. But if we think about on paper, the value of jewelry has continued to rise even through the bear market. So it makes sense as a sound investment. Especially since you don't actually have to, take custody of the assets and safeguard them, or, that's actually all, upkeep and everything like that is done by the company directly.
Very cool. I like that. And it definitely pays to be diversified, not just inside of cryptocurrencies, but outside as well. And to be able to use NFTs as a vehicle to do that as well, I think is going to be a growing trend, and you should be able to, in the future, use NFTs to sort of invest in all industries as they sort of become tokenized and digitized. Super cool. Now, we don't have a lot of time left, Mati, but maybe you have any further insights on asset-backed NFTs and NFT securities, and just securities in general in cryptocurrency? Back in 2018 was supposed to be the year of security token offerings, and now we're seeing, that was before NFTs really blew up, and now we're seeing NFT securities. But I feel like once securities break through into the mainstream, then it should bring a whole new market entrance of traditional investors and regulation as well.
Sure. So since 2015, I've really seen the entire crypto movement as a transformation or a migration, really, towards digital assets and programmable money. Blockchain assets are far superior to everything that came before them. I mean, basically, we were using a piece of paper, right, to represent ownership of a stock or something like this, or certificates. Mm-hmm. Nobody uses those anymore, but they still are upheld within the letter of the law and in practicality of how things work. Stock markets like the New York Stock Exchange, I mean, everything is digital, right? But the ownership is centralized, right? And the ownership of the exchange and the ownership of the individual assets. And it really doesn't make very much sense given the new technology that we have, which is so far superior, that allows actual physical ownership of a financial asset anywhere in the world. And you can trade it, you can break it down into a million pieces, you can put it in a vault, or literally I've been saying this all along, that anything and everything that has a value can be traded on a blockchain more efficiently. And that's where we're headed. So in my mind, it's only a matter of time before all companies, all stocks and all bonds and everything are traded on a blockchain and represented by digital tokens. How long it'll take, I don't know. I think that probably my estimate from 2018 was 5 or 10 years. So I think that we're probably still on track for that one.
Very cool, and that's super exciting to hear. And when you zoom out and look at the big picture, it's super fascinating. Thank you for all these insights, Mati. What's the best way for people to follow along with your work? And I know you're posting a lot of content often.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, on Twitter, it's Mati Greenspan, or get the newsletter. It's completely free, quantumeconomics.io.
Thank you so much. I will leave those links in the description as well to make it easy for the viewers. Appreciate all these insights into the market. All the best with everything on your ventures moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you very much.